provide suggestions for guests and topics.
Great events, programs, and all the countries and
Welcome to this week's segment of Dialogue Houston. I'm your host, Lawrence Payne. To our regular viewing audience, welcome. To those joining us here for the first time, perhaps for HCC's TV Dialogue Houston, we can be found now every Tuesday and Thursday at 6 a.m. and again at 6 p.m., Saturday afternoons at 3 p.m. As always, in the top of the show, let me thank you for your thoughtful calls, emails, and text messages concerning previous shows and guests we've had here on HCC's TV Dialogue Houston, but more importantly, your suggestions for guest topics and subjects to be covered on upcoming segments of Dialogue Houston. For after all, this is your community affairs, public affairs show here on HCC TV, proudly now in its 32nd season. Do we have a special show for you today? We get to announce on Dialogue Houston, the City of Houston's new Poet Laureate. And I'm going to stop there and ask our good friend, Carmen Abrego from the Houston Public Library, who will explain her role and also will introduce who our Poet Laureate is and give the name and have the reveal. And then her and I are going to have a conversation with probably knowing Carmen and Julie somewhere to the side there, perhaps even jumping in because we do this as a group thing. All right, welcome to everyone. And Carmen, it's all yours.
Hi, Larry. Yes, hi. Thank you so much for that. Yes, so I'm very excited. You know, that you mentioned the announcement and the reveal of the new Houston Poet Laureate. That honor went to our honorable mayor, Sylvester Turner. Was that last week?
Yep.
Yes, it was. And so the selection committee that was working months prior. There were many applicants. There's a lot of reviewing that goes into this, and the mayor made his selection and appointed Aris Kian Brown as the 6th Houston Poet Laureate. And we're just very, very excited about that. You know, Larry, at the Houston Public Library, this will be 10 years that the Houston Poet Laureate program has existed, and it's a partnership between the Houston Public Library and the Mayor's Office of Cultural Affairs. And so Aris, being the 6th Houston Poet Laureate and the youngest, she has that distinction as well. You know, the 5 previous Poet Laureates have worked closely with those of us at Houston Public Library. They have brought their wonderful and meaningful work, community projects have come about by having the Poet Laureates have held workshops. They have met with and mentored and done so much at our library locations so that they can bring poetry to the people. And it's just been a wonderful, wonderful program. So as I mentioned, go ahead, Larry.
No, I'm ready. Let me just say that the Mayor's Office of Cultural Affairs has really been wonderful
Yes.
to work with over these 10 years, the 8 years under Mayor Turner, and then the 2 previous years of previous mayor.
That's right.
But this is National Poetry Month, so it's so fitting that we do this also. And I love the description, Aris, before I turn the microphone to you. A poet, a teaching artist, and an imaginer. I love that last one, an imaginer. And so I want to talk to you about that in that role. But without further ado, welcome and congratulations, and the floor is all yours.
Thank you so much. It's very, very lovely and wonderful to be here. Thank you so much, Larry, for having me, for the Houston Public Library. Y'all are all very, very brilliant. I'm looking forward to this role. I'm so excited to talk more about it and to continue to work with y'all for these next 2 years. It's going to be really cool.
You have a great enthusiasm for Houston, which I love.
Sure.
I actually have a little project I want to talk to you about.
Absolutely.
It fits into your thing. But I also read somewhere this phrase as it refers to you, a student of abolition.
Absolutely. Yeah.
And I think that is another wonderful piece of the puzzle. Talk to us a little bit about that, if you will.
Yeah, absolutely. So abolition meaning imagining a world where safety is priority, imagining a world where community is priority, community and relationships are priority, as opposed to thinking through public safety as it was imagined in the past that
Mhm.
came out of a system of slave catching. So the abolition of police and prisons and the making of a world where safety is priority for community members. And we can decide what that looks like. And I say that I'm a student of abolition because I know, one, that abolition is a long-term goal, and that it's something that's a practice, and it's something that you have to learn and embody. And it's not just something that you technically are. An abolitionist is harder to be every day if you don't actually make it intentional. And so when I say a student, it's because I'm constantly learning every day how to implement abolitionist practices into my livelihood, into my work, into how I dream and imagine the world that I want to be a part of.
That is such a wonderful descriptor. This subject is very close and near and dear to my heart. I've spent since 2020 in the post-George Floyd reality. I chaired the mayor's task force on policing reform.
Yeah.
And one of the things that came out of that is that point you made, that the origin of the policing, as we know, police department or policemen, police women, came as slave catchers.
Yeah.
The original marshals, sheriffs, police were organized to catch runaway slaves and return them to their master.
Exactly.
And so when you look at the history of policing as it relates to a population of color,
Yeah.
you understand the roots and the gentry of how we kind of got where we are over the time as it developed.
Exactly.
So it is so important to talk about that and make those connections, which you have done so well, and to talk about going forward, what we need to be very cognitive of to begin to move that needle and bar away from that reality to what everyone who I've talked to in policing really want policing to be and become. As you said, it's going to take time.
Yeah.
But over time, I think we can change that perspective.
Definitely, definitely. And like I was saying, like when we think about transformative and restorative justice, it's recognizing not just like laws put into place, but relationships built and protected and cared for. And it's more about thinking about how can we make sure that people's basic needs are met and that they feel the responsibility to their community because they feel cared for and safe by their community, as opposed to having to follow the law because it's simply just written. It should be embedded in our systems, in our bodies, in our hearts to be good people and to be connected to others and to see those violations of community as something that is our responsibility to constantly think about and improve, et cetera. So that's how I think about my own writing. It's how I think about how I approach my relationships with others. And so I hope to implement that in my role as well.
Well, we're going to help you do that. Let me speak to the point that you raised and connect a couple of dots.
Yeah.
It is all about equity, is it not? Equity and fair treatment of all human beings.
Yeah.
And we've never established a baseline. What is the fair, ethical, moral treatment of all human beings? What does that look like, act like, and feel like? We've never done that.
Right.
And you can't get to the second part of that question until you answer the first. All human beings' lives matter. All human beings are equal.
Yeah.
So if equity is the key, what we've learned and discovered that the road to equity is through empathy.
Yeah.
There is no equity without empathy.
Absolutely.
And to touch on your point, and the road to empathy is through relationships.
Yeah.
Relationships nurtured, developed, and maintained in a very special way. Relations built on mutual trust and respect.
Absolutely.
Because nothing happens without trust.
Yeah.
And one of the reasons the policing is so difficult, the relationship to the community, there is no trust.
Yeah. Yeah, for sure.
And in that vacuum of trust, all things are possible to happen in a negative way.
Yeah.
You have to earn that respect, you have to earn that trust, and you have to live it every day. And it has to be mutual. It has to be a two-way street.
Absolutely.
Mutual trust and respect.
And that's why I
talk about that. I'm excited about seeing where you go with this point. Yeah,
absolutely. And I think the role of poetry in my life especially has been a space in which we establish trust with folks. There's a certain vulnerability that comes with sharing your story and sharing your work. But it's also like vulnerability, and it's building trust with community members who are there to hear you out, there to listen, there to learn, there to celebrate you, there to cry with you. That sort of community building that a poetry space can offer is exactly the kind of community building that our community should offer long term. So if we can start with seeing the model of poetry and how well it's done that, then we can implement that all across the board. I think that's like a really necessary possibility that I would like to implement with this role, but also just with sharing stories, start being able to recognize that your story does matter and people want to hear it, and there's a place for it, is like my absolute goal, starting from young children all the way up. People's stories matter, and like that's exactly why I'm thinking about poetry as it relates to abolition, for sure.
Mm-hmm. And in our role as the Houston Public Library, we're a convener of community and neighborhoods and people in a space that of trust and respect. We create a very safe crucible so that people feel very safe to speak and to talk up and to share their ideas and thoughts. So we're going to do some of that, obviously, with you going forward. And I think the point that you raise is so important to talk about those relationships and to build and develop those relationships. That trust factor cannot be overlooked. And the point you raised about we all have stories.
Yeah.
It is the sharing and telling of our stories, the historical context which informs the present, that allows us to have a great, bright future together going forward. But we have to know each other's stories. We have to know that history. And to get to do that in a way that is in a wonderful environment is just a thing of joy. Because here's the other piece of that I hear behind what you're saying, because there's so much wisdom in your words there. Human beings were meant not just to survive, not even to thrive. Human beings were meant to flourish.
Come on.
To flourish to the fullness of their God-given potential.
Absolutely.
So anything we can do to help that flourishing becomes a responsibility and accountability on us as the fellow human beings in relationship to the other human beings.
Absolutely.
I'm using the word other intentionally. The other. We have to get away from the other. The other is not the other. The other is just a human being just like me.
Right.
Simple as that.
And I feel like Houston is an excellent place to implement that. We have a multitude of languages, cultures, backgrounds, neighborhood differences. Like, this is a space where we can literally see people communing alongside each other. The othering can be obsolete in this space. There are people in neighborhood spaces, in community centers, in libraries that may not look like one another, may not speak the same language, but they're there for the same goal. They're there in community with one another. And that, to me, is like one of the values of being able to be the poet laureate of this particular city.
Yes, ma'am.
I'm a Houston, like, I'm a Houston girl. Like, I'm a Houston, like, enthusiast. I'm a Houston, what's the word? Evangelist. Like, I shout Houston's praises because I recognize the value in what this system, like what this city has, and what we can see when just even walking down the street. And so when I think about those relationships, when I think about this idea of othering, I'm thinking the ways that we can start this work is absolutely going to be in Houston. It's already happening. I see it happening at the Houston Public Library all the time. I see it happening in community centers. I see it happening at organizing spaces. This is literally the place to do it. And I'm excited to just be a part of that.
Well, in a majority minority city, and just using those terms and words needs a little explanation.
For sure.
And it is understandable why you have fear, why you have apprehension. Things are changing.
Yeah.
There are two things going on, as our good friend Dr. Kleinberg at the Rice University tells us, that the graying of Houston and the browning of Houston is happening at the same time.
Yeah.
The graying is all the Anglos, and the Blacks and Hispanics are the browning of Houston. That's not going to change. That's not going to ever go backwards. It's only going to go forward.
Yeah.
Houston's going to become more of a majority city going forward.
Absolutely.
So the ability to get along, to work together, to understand each other, to listen, to grow, to develop is so crucial to the future of this city.
Yeah.
Beyond the training of the young people in school, because that's our future workforce. We keep arguing over that. What are we arguing about? That's our future workforce, period. So all those things become important, because what we're finding in some of the work we do is that connection to the social, economic, and political realities of our lives.
Yeah. Yeah.
Informed by, and the more I listen to you, this next part comes through, informed by the spiritual part of our lives.
Yeah, absolutely.
And those four spheres of our lives are not as separate as people want to make them or care to make them.
Yeah.
They impact the other three parts of our lives, our personal, professional, and public lives.
Mm-hmm.
So when we do the work that we've been doing in this series on Houston, Imagining Houston 2036, we have this wonderful thing, and we'll get you involved with Houston 2036. The library has been the lead in this, in the Houston 2036 movement since 2016. The first utterance of talking about 2036 came out of the Houston Public Library in 2016. We've now grown it to a lot of other organizations.
Nice.
But connecting that is so important to get at. You have a way of laying out stuff, but every time you lay out a part or a component, there's another question behind the question, and you're good at that. Part of what I hear you also saying is the ability to move away from dependency to independency, a way to move away from being proactive, from being reactive all the time and become proactive.
Yeah.
And so that's what you do as a poet. You inform people by connecting the dots to give them the bigger picture of the reality of how they can play a role in their particular place. That's a special gift. And so I'm looking forward to watching you blow that out going forward.
I'm very excited about it. I'm already seeing like models all across Houston. There are really excellent community leaders that are poets, that are also organizers, that are also like really brilliant scholars. And so I'm excited to take my learnings from all of them, but also like the things that I've learned being just a community member in Houston into this role. And the Houston Public Library is like a trailblazer in this work. And so I'm really excited to be working alongside y'all.
Well, community organizers is what has gotten us this far. The role of community organizers through history, when done properly and done inclusive and holistically and involve people and ask them what they think and not what you think. I always say it's not what you think that matters, is what people think that matters. And you involve them in the solutions, right?
Yeah.
Get them engaged and you get them committed and accountable to their own solutions that they articulated, that they came forward with. It's so important. We have only a few minutes left, so I'm going to get you to kind of dive into your crystal ball and project a little bit in the future, and make sure you touch on or mention anything that you want to make sure you get in the time we have left.
Yeah, absolutely. So looking ahead, at the end of my 2 years, I hope to enact my project, which is at this point called Space for Us, Afrofuturism and the Poetic Imagination, which is a project in which we are able to interview Houstonians all across the neighborhoods, all across the city, and ask them questions about Houston, what they think of Houston, what they think of the term space city, what they want Houston to look like 50 years from now, and what they want Houston to look like tomorrow. And these questions of imagination, one, are going to be archived as like these profiles, so we can see what a whole bunch of Houstonians have in store for the future, what they imagine for the future. And then those answers, after they're all compiled, will be stitched together by me into a Houston-based poem. So this collective group piece of Houstonians, their words coming together, and we can see the collective nature and the collective poetry by these folks. And then that poem itself can be translated into multiple languages across Houston. And for me, the importance of this is, one, thinking about how to integrate non-English languages into this literary field. It's already prevalent. We already have really amazing non-English speaking or non-English writing poets and scholars and translators. And so I want to make sure that that feels a part of my project, that is integrated into this project to hold the weight and the work of Houston and the people and communities of Houston that may or may not speak multiple languages.
Wonderful.
And so I'm excited about that, but I'm also excited about the smaller ways in which I can be utilizing library spaces to just bring and amplify poets of communities that I may not have had access to otherwise. Who's in the East End that's doing really excellent work that can be platformed? Who's in Greenspoint, Aldine, that's doing really excellent work? How do we amplify them across the neighborhoods of Houston and give them a spotlight? So that's what I'm excited about, and hopefully long term we'll be able to expand this project and people can learn from this project and take it in ways that fuels them and excites them and teaches them more about the brilliance of Houston.
Wonderful. Let me plant a seed for that as you laid out this great vision.
Yes, please.
Let me plant a seed on that vision.
Yeah.
Rather than the 50-year horizon, back it down to 13 years in 2036.
2036.
2036 is the city of Houston's 200th birthday. On Discovery Green on August 26 and 2036, Mayor Turner is the 62nd mayor, the 64th mayor into the first year of her second term. Will be the mayor celebrating Houston 2036. What if you were standing next to that mayor reading your poem about Houston as we celebrate our 200th anniversary?
That'd be really brilliant, actually.
And I'm just throwing it out there. You're the fifth poet laureate. Sixth poet laureate, I'm sorry. Somebody do the math real quick. So to be which number poet laureate in 2036. But it goes back to the poem that you worked on, that you laid the foundation for, that you get to read in 2036 as we celebrate our 200th anniversary.
Yeah.
And then pick up the nugget from there, the challenge of the next into the 2050. Anyway, that's how
that's really brilliant. That's
how my mind works.
That's
so,
big brain. I love that.
Because I think it gives people an horizon that they can see, they can deal with. 13 years is something we can envision.
Yeah.
I'll be an old man, but I plan to be standing there on August 30th, 2036 in Discovery Green. Absolutely. As we celebrate our 200th anniversary.
Absolutely.
So let's say this. We'll put a pause for now in our dialogue and conversation with you. We're gonna have you on again, I can tell, going forward once you kind of get more into the work. And we'll follow it and track it very carefully because I'm excited about it. I'm excited for you. I'm excited for the city. I'm excited for a multicultural, multiracial, multi-everything city to have someone who is thoughtful and reflective as you to begin to pull some of this together in a reality. So I can't thank you enough for being on, Aris. I can't thank you enough to Carmen and Julie and to our wonderful mayor in the selection process of you. I think this is great. So let me just close with a few closing thoughts in the couple of minutes we have left. A united, equitable, inclusive Houston where all human beings get to thrive, get to survive, nay, get to flourish. That should be our goal. To do that, we have to understand the reality of charity and justice. Charity alone, without its companion justice, will never be enough. Charity, we're great at in Houston, in philanthropy, in giving, in sharing, but it's all reactionary. It's all after the fact. It's easy, it's simple. We love charity. We will love charity until charity continues forever. It's about justice. It's about proactive. It's about policy change. It's about going up to the mouth of the river to find out what's causing the bodies to float down the river every year and putting a nip and bud in that finally. It's the hard work. It's the challenging work. It's the advocacy work. It's the work that you really have to be committed to for the long haul to see the policy changes that we're looking for. I know Houston can do it. I know we're beginning to reassess our charity work and what success we have and what do we have to show for it, what's the benefit, what's the return on investment. We put a lot of money into a lot of things, including public urban education. We don't have a lot to show for it. And so the gap that is still existing between the money we need to properly fund public education for the schools that we keep talking about, that at the bottom of the equation every year is a simple factor of money. We've never been willing to fund those schools enough. We're still not willing to fund those schools with the extra money they need to be successful. So whether the state takes it over or not, or the state doesn't do it, doesn't matter. It's still the same issue of the money. If you're not willing to put the money in, nothing happens. So we're at that point, an inflection point, as a city, when it comes not only to education, but to our relationships with each other as human beings in a multicultural, multiracial, multi-ethnic, multi-religious community, and trying to figure out how to make it work. We know this, though. It is about relationships. It is about telling and sharing our stories. It is about trust. It is about all those things we've kind of touched on this evening, to begin to have people really come together and to develop those kind of relationships. So we look forward to you joining us on this journey that the library and all of its partners, the partnership of the 2036 partnership that is growing every day. We look forward to you joining and being part of that. We look forward to you following the wonderful work that Aris is going to do. It all fits together in a wonderful mosaic, in a wonderful tapestry of who we are as Houstonians. And so it becomes clear that this us and them, this artificial divide of using the words us and them, is something that is truly artificial. It is something that we realize cannot go on any longer. And it is clearly understood because what is happening not only in Houston, but across America. Half of the population fears losing something. The other half is fighting to gain something. And so when you have those polarizations so clearly delineated, so clearly defined, someone has to be that middle bridge. Someone has to be the convener. Someone has to bring those individuals and human beings together. Public libraries across this country are doing that and have done it better than anyone else and will continue to do that. So as we go forward, it is a great opportunity to put a lot of these pieces of the puzzle together. I'm excited about it, and we're going to dive in deeply. So until we come together for our next segment of Dialogue Houston, as always, look forward to you joining us. Be well, be safe, and peace, power, and love.
When I was in foster care, I never knew when I would have to move, so I always had my suitcase ready to go. Then one day, I was adopted. My new parents opened their hearts and home to me. My parents cook my favorite breakfast for me every morning. My parents take me on trips I never thought I would go on. They gave me a home and an even better reason to use that suitcase. My parents aren't perfect, but they're perfect for me.
Things could be stranger, but I don't know how. I'm going through changes now. Could spend a lifetime trying to figure it out.